Hey everyone. Yeah, I wanted to come on here and in tribute in uh, in honor of the fact that, well, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic has come to an end. The animation portion that is, because of the fact that the continuity of the animated series is going to continue in the comic book by IDW. Next April 2020, with a season 10. But I wanted to come on here and just give you my thoughts overall of how I became a fan, and how I got into this incarnation of My Little Ponies, even years after the original past generations had come before it. So here we go, and this will be uncut, on the fly, and unscripted. How I got into My Little Pony, well, first of all, how I got into this generation, we have to look back to when I was younger. I was about 6 years old when this first animated special, primetime special, came out, which was Rescue from Midnight Castle, which has been redubbed throughout the years and the decades as Rescue from Midnight Castle, Escape from Midnight Castle. And I just remember that being one of the first Hasbro animated programs that I saw. Now, this was around the time in '84 that I was getting into Transformers. I was mostly Transformers. Back then in the '80s, they specifically made sure what shows were targeted at what demographic and what gender. For example, Transformers and G.I. Joe were mostly for boys. My Little Pony and Gem were mostly for girls. So for My Little Pony to be something that boys would watch on occasions, because maybe there was nothing else on, especially if the initial pilot is shown in prime time in syndication, one could say that one could say that it would be easy for boys to actually kind of gain an interest in the original MLP from the beginning. And when you take into equivalation, or take into, I should say, if you take into what they did later on with not just the movie, which was like the third thing that they did. I mean, they did two pilot primetime specials, Rescue from Midnight Castle, Escape from Katarina, and then they did the '86 movie, which was basically I guess you could say, the beginning of the animated series, which it continued off of. You can't blame Hasbro for, actually attracting a young boy demographic at that time, even if that young male boy demographic was more into Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man, you name it. The reason I think young guys like young males like myself at that time, around the ages of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. The reason we kind of got intrigued by this was not just because of the timing as to when the show would air. Through various times. I think there was one time it was on ABC Saturday mornings. But the other thing was when they introduced some male characters, not just the human characters, which were like, the human characters were basically like what Ash Ketchum and Chris Thorndike were in shows like Pokemon and Sonic X. The human characters were basically the main focus, while the ponies, they were also the main focus, but most of the time a lot of the stories centered around, you know, characters like Megan and her siblings saving the day. So to a young boy, a young male like myself at that time, that could be a bit of a turnoff. That is until they introduced the Big Brother ponies, which was like, what is this? And the only reason I think they introduced them was the fact that they knew that, okay, we got some female fans, young girl fans, getting into Transformers, getting into G.I. Joe. We need some males. Let's try to see if we can win over some young, you know, males, young boys over to the pony, over to the pony side of things, over to the gem side of things. So they started adding in all these different characters, introducing all these different characters and stuff, which when you as a young boy hear about, you know, these characters debuting eventually, or debuting in an upcoming episode, it's like, oh, wait a minute, they're bringing in male characters, they're bringing in boy characters? Ooh, I want to see this. And that's what grabbed my attention. So to say as a young boy, a young man at the time, well, young boy period, that I watched My Little Pony, that I enjoyed watching it, I'll say that, I'll put it this way, if you compared the two right now, I think it's a definite, you know, victory for Friendship is Magic when it comes over Generation 1, because Friendship is Magic definitely is the more intriguing show, and it's been proven, you know, year after year after year. But I'm not saying that Generation 1 wasn't bad. It's just that you could tell that even though they tried adding some elements in there to get the young male demographic to probably give it a chance, it was mostly targeted towards young girls. The same could be said for the second generation series, which was My Little Pony Tales. Now this was a series that was aired both in syndication and on the Disney Channel, which really surprised me. And I first discovered it because it came out, I think, around 92, you know. Excuse me. It came out around 92. So, you know, I didn't know about it until about a year or so, about 2 years later, about a year and a half later, because due to some personal situations, personal family situations, I was sent back out to Kansas to live with my dad. And he had cable. He had cable installed in the house we were supposed to live in, but because it was over 100 years old and needed a lot of work, it's like it wasn't worth it, to my mom, that is. So anyway, my dad had cable installed there, and one of the things he had was Disney Channel. So I ended up watching Disney Channel, and one of the shows that they had on there was My Little Pony Tales, because I think at the time, with certain properties, Disney had a partnership with Hasbro, just kind of like what they do now when it comes to the merchandise, comes to some of the merchandise and all that. Disney had, like I said, this deal with Hasbro, I'm assuming, to air some of their programming on their network. And one of the main programs they would show was My Little Pony Tales, which I think was not just created for syndication, but was co-created for Disney Channel. And you can kind of see that in the animation style, because the animation style, I'll put it this way, the animation style is kind of a hybrid almost of G1 and what was to be G4. That's what it was. It was kind of like a hybrid. You could tell that there was a progression going on. So I ended up watching that, and I actually enjoyed it, because it wasn't just, oh, girl characters, da da da. They had some boy characters in there too, and the setting was, oh wait, they're in school. And depending on how you look at it, one could say, well, it wasn't necessarily a grade school. It was more like a junior high school like environment. But it was toned down in a significant way. But you can tell, you kind of see the direction they were trying to go in. So as long as they kind of had, like, I think an equaling, a kind of a equality kind of situation here with the characters, as complex as that may sound, I was cool with it. I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed it to the point that when they finally put it out on DVD, Shout Factory, that is, I bought it along with the complete series. Even though I had the first season of the original G1 series on DVD already, thanks to Rhino Home Video, I ended up getting the complete series thanks to Shout Factory. Now, when it came to G3, I didn't watch it as much because I believe, like everybody else, I kind of looked at the designs. I'm like, I'm not too sure. And then I started, watching some of the clips. I think that were being promoted online, and I think this was just a little around the time YouTube was coming into existence, just around that time, a little before. And I started seeing these clips online, like everybody else, of what they look like, and I'm like, oh, that's not a good direction. I will say though that the figures, the toys, the collectibles, if you will, that they were selling, made up for that. And I should know because I ended up buying a few of the pony figures, and yeah, you could definitely tell that they made up for it in a big way. And these figures were kind of very, like I mentioned with My Little Ponytails and G1, and the animation design in My Little Ponytails G2 being sort of like a hybrid of what you saw in G1 and what you see now, or what you would see in G4. There was sort of that same kind of hybrid design of what the original toys looked like and what they were trying to go for. Now, I don't have those on me anymore because even though I did buy them at my Walmart where I was working in Lawrence, Kansas at the time, when I came back here and moved back here in 2007, I didn't want my family to see that I had these. So what I did, I'm pretty sure they knew I had them. But anyway, long story short, we didn't have any young, nieces. I didn't have any young nieces on my side of the family except for my older niece. And she was like 15 at the time. So I figured, okay, that's not going to work. What can I do who can I give this to? And the thought was, hey, wait a minute, my cousin has some young daughters, I'll give them to them for Christmas. And that's what I did. I gave them to them for Christmas because at that time we would get together at my grandma's and my late grandpa's, my grandma's house, if you will, for Christmas and give each other's gifts. And I figured, well, I'm going to see them there, I'll give it to them, I'll give them the toys. Now, I don't know if they still have them or if they gave them away, whatever. But I felt like I just didn't really need them at the time. But I will say that as far as G3 goes, is the only positive thing that came out of it. As far as G4, Friendship is Magic, is concerned, I was kind of iffy on it. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of stories, even lately, of a lot of people that were iffy on the show because they were like, we're not too sure. I mean, even when you look at the recent Pony of Decade documentary special that they did, the tie-in with the finale, even the staff there thought, oh, it's only going to last a couple of seasons, like 2, 3, 4 seasons at most. And that was pretty much the mindset of myself, and I'm sure a lot of people watching. That was the mindset of myself, and I'm assuming Dr. Wolf, Thespio, Lightning Bliss, Firebrand, Silver Quill, Keyframe, Golden Fox. I'm pretty sure that was the same mindset they had of, oh, this is not going to last long. It'll be done within a couple of years, and that'll be it. And I had that mentality. I had that mentality for a while. I even went. And again, you could see this on YouTube. All you have to do is type in BW Roses, Brony, and you'll see a video pop up. One of them should be the video saying I'm not a Brony. And I put this video out because even though at the time, and I think it was 2012 that I put it out, even though at the time the show was, I think, in its second season, I believe, second season going on third season, Even though it was in that transitional period, I still felt like it wasn't going to last too much longer. And I came out and I acknowledged basically that I'm not a Brony. I respect what the show has done, the fan base it's created, but I'm just not going to be one of those people that turns around and becomes a big time fan and becomes a Brony themselves. And honestly, I've said this before, I'll say it again. When I look back at that video, and then I look back at what I said last year, I think it was last year, yeah, I pretty much can eat a lot of crow right now, if you know what I mean, because yeah, what a difference 6 to 7 years makes. Because yeah, everything I said there at that time may have remained true, but as time went on, and I kind of look back at this as being sort of the slow build of me, the slow build and appreciation and respect and love that I would have for the show. I look at the fact that in some of my videos I would talk about Friendship is Magic. I would talk about the characters and the situations. I think it was about, 2016, 15, I started collecting some of the merchandise. I think it mostly with the Funko stuff. And it just spiraled from there. It just went from there. Just a domino effect just went from there. And one of the first episodes I ever watched and even recorded was Luna Eclipsed, which was the Halloween themed episode. The first Halloween themed episode. And the more I got intrigued with the show, the more I gained the more I gained intrigue into the show and its environment, and through what other people were saying and explaining and talking about how they got won over, through the stories and the scenarios, the lore. One thing that always caught my mind or caught my attention was when they would talk about the characters that helped get them into this, like the presentation of certain characters that helped them get into the show. And for me, the one character that started it all for me getting into this show, or at least really getting intrigued, was Princess Luna. Everybody would talk about Luna in such a high regard, as because of the fact that we didn't see her after the two-part series premiere. We didn't see her for the rest of season 1, even though it'd been put on record that she was initially supposed to come back in season 1, but I guess Hasbro or somebody in the upper management didn't want her to come back because she was a villain. Her design was something scary. Was too villainous or too much scary for the kids. I don't know, something like that. And yet we get this Luna, this redesign of Luna in season 2. And the rest is history. And it was because of Luna and the way, like I said, people were talking about her and, saying this about her, talking about how if you watch the character, you could see that she has a bit of a rebelliousness to her, which you can definitely see, and that's a train going by outside. But you could definitely see that rebelliousness in her. Basically, she was kind of like that rebellious younger sibling and teen that you could relate to. And people just enjoyed her. And it's because of that people really just started to appreciate her and enjoy her for who she was. And, that's how I started to appreciate her, because there was just an aura to her. There was just an aura to Luna that really attracted you to the character and made you want to like her, made you want to respect who she was. And I think it was also the fact that as time went on and the seasons went on, she would try to redeem herself. She would try to make up for what she had done as Nightmare Moon. So you really had to respect her for that. And the fact that at the time, even up to about, season 6, season 7, you know, she got more development than Celestia. And I think that's why fans really appreciated her, because she had more development than Celestia. She was willing to help out and go out of her comfort zone when she needed to, especially with the Cutie Mark Crusaders. I think they even made her an honorary Cutie Mark Crusader. So, yeah, there was just a lot of things about Luna in the show, and I think even in the comics, that really got fans to appreciate who she was and get behind her. And the same went with me, because like I said, she had this kind of an aura to her that attracted you to her, that made you want to, you know, get behind her and support her and cheer for her. You know, even if she was being, not even if she was being held down and not being able to do what she felt was right. Another thing that helped me get into the show besides Luna was this, Spike and Rarity. Spike and Rarity was basically a ship that, you know, it's like with Luna, in her presence being an aura that attracts you to the show, attracts you to her character, and makes you want to watch the show just to see what happens with her. The same could be said with the relationship between Spike and Rarity, because a lot of us could relate with Spike. A lot of us boys, a lot of us men, guys can relate with Spike when it comes to having a thing, if you will, having an attraction, you know, having a crush, if you will, you know, falling heads over heels for basically what we would consider our dream girl, and wanting to see someone like Spike accomplish that goal. And that to me was something that really drove me to want to see the show as well, to see what was going to happen here. And I appreciate what the writers like the creators and writers like Lauren Faust and Nicole Dubuque and Michael Vogel and Josh Haybird and all of them did when they would get the opportunity, even Megan McCarthy, when they would get the opportunity to kind of, you know, focus an episode or parts of an episode on these two and continue giving you these little moments here and there, these little Easter eggs here and there, these little hints here and there, and sometimes full on focusing on the ship right then and there. I mean, Secret of My Excess, you know, Spike's arc and Best Gift Ever, Molt Down, Dragon Dropped, you know, you name it. You name it. Rarity's reaction to Spike almost getting eaten when he's caught up in a tree in the final season's mid-season finale. I mean, little moments like that is what really got fans, is what really, I believe, attracted fans, even later fans, to the show, because this was a relationship that you could base somewhat in reality and parts in fantasy. I mean, if you want a good example from a long-time legendary source, you know, take a look at Spider-Man. You know, Spider-Man had Peter Parker, and even though a lot of us later fans didn't know about Gwen Stacy until we read up about her, when Mary Jane got introduced, it's like, you know, even from that initial first date set up by both their aunts, you know, you wanted to see these two become an item. You wanted to see them go from being just, you know, friends to becoming something more, which inevitably they did. And that's how fans felt about Spike and Rarity. Now, even though it's not totally confirmed that they end up together, you know, in the end, it's pretty much open to interpretation, especially when you take a look at the scenario of certain scenes in the final episode where Rarity is right next to Spike, even at the end. And it's like, you know, what more evidence you need to kind of probably interpretate that perhaps there's something there between them. And the fact that Dragon Dropped ended with Spike saying that even though he and Gabby, his pen pal, had a good time, or had a great time, I'm helping helping out with Gabby's deliveries, mail route, that he'll always want his Rarity time. So to me, that along with Luna is what really attracted me to the show, and over time I just enjoyed what I saw. I mean, obviously the reaction videos I've done, taking a trip to the Regal Cinema in Turlock to see the movie on opening day. It's just, I just don't think there's any more evidence I could talk about that pretty much shows why I became a fan, and why the video I made 7 years ago is now irrelevant to how I am now. So yeah, that's basically how I got into My Little Pony, or how I've known about it, and how I got into Friendship is Magic. I think the best example of me showing my fandom, the best example of me truly showing that I've become a fan and of the franchise of Friendship is Magic, was not just, as I mentioned, buying the figures slowly but surely, like the little mini Funkos to the big Funkos to the plushes and stuff like that. I think the best example for me would be when I started to do what's known as PMVs, Pony Music Videos, myself. And I think the first one I did was about over a year ago, and that was Hello, which was dedicated to Spike and Rarity, which of course is a Lionel Richie song, very popular. And then after that, it just started to go from there. I did another one called Classic, which focused on the My Little Pony characters, mostly the girl characters. And then again, it just went from there, and I started doing songs like You and Me, doing PMVs. What I'm saying is that I would start doing songs featuring what I would start doing, I'm trying to say, sorry. I would start doing PMVs featuring songs like You and Me by Tiffany, C'est la Vie by Bewitched, The Touch on multiple occasions, especially recently, by Stan Bush, Hero by Skillet, I've Got the Power from the He-Man and She-Ra Secret of the Sword movie, Give Your Love to Me, which is from Chattanooga Cats, or Chattanooga Cats, or something like that. Hook, Line, and Sinker from the Tom Sawyer 2000 animated film. Just a bunch. And to me, that is probably the best example of showing my love for the fandom, because it takes a certain franchise for me to pay attention to want to do these kind of videos. For example, I would do I would end up doing fan vids and AMVs for Sonic the Hedgehog, Sat AM, Sonic X, if you will, Rescue Rangers, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, Bonkers, Tailspin, you name it, Yogi Bear, stuff like that. Those would be the kind of fan vids, AMVs, animated music videos, if you will, anime music videos, that I would do because I was into the fandoms. I even did some for, I think, Yu-Gi-Oh! The original Yu-Gi-Oh! Before they went to GX and all that. So, like I said, it takes a certain fandom. It takes a certain fandom for me to really get into. To want to make fan vids, AMVs, if you will, based around it. So for me to start doing that for My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, really shows you, like I said, the effect it had on me, the effect it's had on a lot of fans that have been with it since the start almost. come in recent years and later years. It shows you that if they're willing to do these pony music videos, these PMVs, as a show of the love for the franchise, I can't think of any better example of showing your love for it more than that. I can't really think of it. I can't think of any better example, because you're basically dedicating a majority of your time. Sorry about that, but a majority of your time to making this work using whatever software, video editing, software you can think of. Excuse me. You're using any kind of video editing software, any video movie making software you can think of. For me, it's Cyber Power Director 14. For others it could be Windows Movie Maker. For some it could be Adobe's video editing software. It could be any of those. And the fact that people will take their time, either hours, even if it's within one day or it's days over time, it shows you the dedication and love that they have. And I can't think of any better example. I mean, I know some people might say, well, there are those out there that make livings, or not livings, but make music, cover music to some of the songs presented in the show. They take time and create electric dub remakes or club dub remakes and stuff, or remixes, I should say. Not remakes, but remixes. They do dubstep remixes, club remixes, stuff like that they show off at conventions, whether they're pony related or they're not. And yeah, that is a true dedication and a show and love of the franchise by the fans. But to me, from a personal standpoint, I can't think of any better example than doing pony music videos when I've done them. So to me, that's probably the best example of showing love for the franchise. I really do. Obviously, my favorite ship, as far as relationships go, basically those more than that mean more than friendship. I think my favorite, obviously, I mentioned it earlier, is Spike and Rarity. There's just something about Spike and Rarity, like I said, that reminds me of. Well, it doesn't necessarily remind me, but kind of gives me that feeling of wanting to see the underdog, if you will, win out in the end. And that's how I view Spike. I view Spike as being that underdog that no one would ever think would get with someone like Rarity, because she's basically like the beautiful girl next door that, even though you live next door to her and she's friendly and she's nice and all that to you, nobody around you thinks, oh, you have a chance to be with her, you have a chance to win her over. And that's the kind of underdog story that I see when they decide to focus on Spike and Rarity's relationship, due to the fact that it has that underdog feeling. And that's what a lot of fans appreciate about it. And what's interesting is they didn't make Rarity into a character that didn't want to be, crushed on, or, followed and worshipped, from head to hoof by someone like Spike. No, they made her into a character that, when they finally did the episode Secret of My Excess, and Spike did what he did out of the willingness, not manipulation, but the willingness of his heart, by giving Rarity that heart-shaped fire ruby. And then later on, as towards the end of the episode, where you have him falling out through the sky, and Spike, and this is way before Spike got his wings. This is like 6 seasons before. And you have Spike and her falling to the sky, and Spike's like, Rarity, before we, Rarity, I got something to tell you before we hit. And he's about to tell her, he's about to say, I've always had this, crush on you. And just before he's about to finish it, she stops him. She shushes him with her hoof. Then you have the camera focused on her. You see tears coming out of her eyes, a smile on her face. And everybody has pretty much kind of looked at that as like, yeah, she's known. It's like, oh, okay, she's already known. She's pretty much known about this. But I guess she was hoping to hear it from him herself or something, or something like that. I mean, a lot of fans interpreted it like, oh, she's pretty much telling him, hey, I know, and I appreciate it. I love that. I'm touched by it. And, people can look at it that way. And some look at it another way, like when Spike's about to do this and she stops him before he finishes, and she has the tears and the smiling tears. She has the smile with the tears coming out. It's like, maybe she knows, or maybe she knows what he's about to say, and she's touched by the fact that out of all the creatures, mostly all the stallions out there, young, old, whatever you want to, however you look at it, he's her very first crush. And that's like, wow, wait a minute. So you have Rarity, who is looked at as the most beautiful, one of the more beautiful ponies in Equestria, and yet Spike is her first crush. Spike's the first one to really show any affection, any attraction, any kind of love for this girl. And it's like, what were the rest of the stallions thinking, Anyway, though, yeah, from episodes like that to, you had Dragon Quest where she stood up for him saying she's not into fashion, but she'll rip the dragons to pieces if they harm Spike. To moments here and there, and even the moments that some people might say they appreciate, like some of the episodes that would focus on them. Some people will be like, yeah, we appreciate this more because it doesn't, flatinize, or it doesn't, push or shove Spike's crush on Rarity or anything. It treats it more equally like a regular friendship. And that's fine. People could look at it that way, and when you watch the episode, you could pretty much be like, yeah, I can kind of see what they're saying. But that the creative staff, that the creative staff sees that if they go with this direction, or this part of the story, go in the direction with this part of the story, it's going to, grab the attention of the Sparity, the Spike and Rarity shippers and supporters. Like with the Summer Sun Setback, or the Summer Sun Setback, or something like that. I think that's the episode. Yeah, that's the episode now. It's kind of a long episode it's like a weird name to have for an episode, the Summer Sun Setback. They have a moment in there where Spike and Rarity are paired off to go talk with the unicorns who's setting up the fireworks. So, so for like having moments like that, an episode like Inspiration Manifestation, other examples. Some might say Dragon Drops is a good example, but then again, you got the ending where basically Spike, like I said earlier, says even though he and Gabby had a good time on her route, that he always wanted his Rarity time, and he's holding her hoof in his hand, and then Pinky's line, of course, kind of being somewhat innuendo, if you will, or sort of like interpreted, if you will, in a certain way, doesn't really help. But still, there are moments in there. I mean, heck, you take a look at basically the ending, the battle, the fight, in the second part of the ending of the end. and you have Rarity and Spike fighting together. I mean, Rarity is basically the one that as soon as Spike gets shot in the back, I saw that and I'm like, oh shoot, you just pissed her off, because she instantly turned around, put a big old shield up, and then when that failed, and it looks like she's about to get blasted, Spike gets up, breathes his fire right at Chrysalis, and then Rarity, combines her magic with it, and for a brief moment, I don't think anybody's noticed this, but for a brief moment, you see that Spike and Rarity's power combined is a little bit more powerful than Chrysalis, to the point that she has to back up and literally fire a blast right into the middle between them to separate them, because the combined power is actually forcing her back a little bit. It's like, I don't know if anybody noticed that, but I noticed it. It's basically like, and to me, the writers of that episode, the writers and the creative staff of the episode, they knew what they were doing, because when you take a look at that Easter egg or that reference, even as small as it is, it shows that Chrysalis was always about eating, sucking the love, draining the love, sucking the love out of every creature, right? Basically the life force. And here you have basically what looks like the love between two characters outpowering her, because it seems that when love is given and used correctly, it kind of outpowers her. It outstrengthens her. So yeah, I don't know if anybody noticed that. But anyway, it's examples like that. Best gift ever, many would consider as probably the best example of a Sparity ship. Of the Sparity ship, basically really opening the door to the interpretation that, yeah, after that heartwarming, that they're together. And here's what's funny. Best gift ever could be viewed now as taking place at any time. It doesn't have to take place just after season 8. It could take place after the series. And there you go. You can put it in any part of the continuity you want. But anyway, that's probably the best example there. And heck, they even have moments in the movie, like when Spike and Twilight show up or meet up with the rest of the main 7 at the staging area where Songbird Serenade's going to sing, and all the others in 5 of the main 7 are saying hi to Twilight, and Rarity's the one that says hi to Spike. And Spike hears this and he looks at her and he's like, "Hi, Rarity," and he blushes. And it's like, come on, you know what you're doing if you're a creator. You as a creator and part of the writing staff, you know what you're doing. And I understand, and look, I understand that I and a lot of other people understand that there are fans out there that don't want to see Spike and Rarity together. They feel it's wrong. But I guess now they look at the final episode, the last prom, I think they might change their mind. I mean, there are some people that have already done some artwork based around it. So, I don't see what the problem is, honestly, with the ship. And even Jim Miller has come out himself and has said, because the one thing that really got fans just debating about this whole Spike and Rarity deal was the age. Basically, a lot of fans would always look at Spike as being young. He's a kid. He's a baby dragon. All because why? What, in the first episode he's looked at as a baby dragon? Hello, that's the first episode. That's just an introductory, that's only an introduction to the series and the characters involved. I mean, Luna's design is different in the very first episode. It took the IDW comic to explain how she changed designs. Excuse me. But it took the IDW comic to show how she changed looks, how she had a redesign. So overall, Jim Miller, like I was saying, even himself, while this has been debated as to, whether or not they should be together, all because of, the age and all that, stuff like that. Jim Miller came out on Twitter and even said, you know, in pony years, Spike's like 16 to 22. And in dragon years, he's 10 to 12. And a lot of people would rather look at the latter as being the reason he shouldn't be with Rarity. But if that's the case, according to Law and Faust, the main six, that being Rarity, Twilight, Applejack, Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, and Fluttershy, all should be in the late teens, like around 17, 18, in pony years, or 16 to 18 in pony years. So if those 16 to 18 in pony years, wouldn't that make them about, 10 to 12 in dragon years? I'm just saying. But anyway, you know, even Jim Miller jumped in on it and said that basically, you know, Spike's pretty much in the age range to where, yeah, he could be with Rarity now. Even I love Kim Possible a lot. When she talked about Dragon Dropped, she reviewed that recently. She brings it up a little bit, but she also brings up the fact that Spike got his wings, and it's like, okay, in her eyes, Spike gets his wings, he's grown up. Rarity should be, you know, it should be okay for him to be with Rarity, right? I'm just saying. The point is overall, I look at this as probably, in my opinion, because the one thing that Jim Miller told me in a tweet during a recent Q&A that he did, not the one he just did recently, but one before that, was, and I even did a video on this here on my channel, is that it's open to interpretation. You can interpret it any way you want. You want to interpret Spike and Rarity being together or starting a relationship after Dragon Dropped? That's your call. You want to interpret maybe they're just going to remain friends? That's your call. But honestly, you could tell just by the fan reactions, thanks to the last episode, or thanks to the finale, and even after Dragon Dropped, you could tell a majority of the fans are behind Spike and Rarity being together. And I, for one, am happy to see that. And what that does for future stories in the season 10 version of the comic is it opens the door even more so to it can be made truly official. And again, I know some fans may not like that, but you know what? There's a saying, or there's something in media that is true. If you're going to tease a relationship between two characters, but not make it official just yet, or in the immediate prime media that it's focused in or touched upon in, but it's also touched upon in, let's say, another form of media, like say comics, then that latter will probably be the most likely where it gets confirmed. And I'm not saying it will be, but I think it's good. I think the comic's going to really over time in the season 10 issues, really, I think when they have the opportunity, put more emphasis on Spike and Rarity and the relationship evolving into something more, especially with maybe showing us issues with Spike's getting bigger and growing stronger and going from there. So, but yeah, Spike and Rarity has always been my favorite relationship and ship in the show. They've always been my favorite, and I don't think nobody's going to change my mind about that. Honestly, I don't plan to really do anything with my collection right now. I'm just leaving it as it is because basically I plan. I mean, with the fact that, to me, Generation 4 is still continuing. Friendship is Magic is still continuing. The fact that we're getting a 10th season in the IDW comics, I think, is a great thing. So I think, so obviously not, I'm not gonna, excuse me, I'm not going to do anything with my collection right now. I mean, for goodness sakes, I have the Cantalot Sequestria set assembled on top of my shelf here, and yeah, it's a little bit hard to. It'll be a little bit hard to basically move that and store that. So I'm just going to keep things as they are. The only unfortunate thing that I can't do is store anything else, because my room's a lot smaller than what I had in Patterson. And even though behind me I could consider being partially part of my room, it's technically not, even though it's got some of my past gaming systems in there, like the Wii and the Wii U and the GameCube and whatnot, as well as my television I used to have when I lived in Kansas, and I brought here with me to California. Even though I could probably utilize that room, it's not going to happen. It's not really going to happen because that's a little bit smaller too. So I'm not really going to do anything just yet. The plan, obviously, when it comes to me and my family, mostly me and my mom, is we plan to work on the garage down the line and kind of sort out some boxes, put some stuff in totes, and if we get enough room in there, maybe I might try something like, maybe I might buy some more shelves or glass cases and I might store stuff in there. I don't know. But right now I'm not going to really do anything just yet, because to me, even though I haven't been a fan as long as, like I said, a lot of people have, I'm one of those that is sort of like a late bloomer, even though my intrigue, as I've mentioned before, and interest started to really grow in the mid 2010s, around 2015, 16, and just really started to blossom from there, grow and evolve from there. I'm not really going to do much besides that. I'm not going to really move any stuff that I have, because where am I going to put it? There's not enough room in the garage, so it's going to take time. But it's going to take time. But in time, I'm going to figure it out. I mean, I've got stuff in here that, honestly, I'd have to take off the walls. Like, I'd have to take them off, put them in like maybe some plastic bags or Ziploc bags or storage bags or whatever. But yeah, as far as my collection goes, I'm not really going to do anything with it, because I know one of the things people get asked, a lot of other fans, Bronies and Pegasisters, get asked is, okay, the show's over. What are you going to do when the show? They've been getting asked, I should say, is when the show ends, what are you going to do about the collection you have? And I don't think anybody's going to do anything with their collections that they have. I think they're going to keep them as they are. Part of my collection is the fact that I have basically pictures of, I have the screenshots of Luna and Celestia coming into the meeting room at Twilight's Castle, looking all badass, if you will. Not once but twice, a small version here and then a large version over here. As well as I have the BronyCon billboard called Welcome to Baltimore hanging up. It's kind of like a small photograph picture that I edited and printed out. As well as I got the smaller version of the Sparkle 7 promotional picture. So, as well as I got this little art piece right here that someone made of the main 7 in the recording studio, representing their voice actresses that voice their characters. So, I've got a lot still going, and to me, it just there's not really, how do I put this? There's just too much to store, if you will, and and let's be honest, there's a lot of people that have collectibles out there of stuff, of shows and franchises that have come and gone, and they have not, hidden them or stored them away. So I'm not going to do the same with mine. I'm going to keep them up as long as I have to. And I know that frustrates, and I know that's something that might frustrate people, but they're like, well, the show's over. You should just store them. They'll be memorabilia. You can bring them out later on. Here's the thing, though. I truly believe, honestly, we're going to get more Friendship is Magic content, not just through IDW Comics, not just through upcoming shorts to tie into the, to tie into the last problem, the final episode of the series or anything like that. Not just stuff like that, but I believe we're going to get more specials maybe down the line. So, I'm not really going to do anything right now as far as my collection goes. I'm just going to leave it as it is, and that's about it. And I know, honestly, this is my honest opinion, I believe others are going to do the same thing. I think Little Shy FIM on Twitter and on YouTube, he's going to do the same thing. He's got a lot of My Little Pony merchandise and collectibles, mostly derpy at times. So I think he's going to keep his stuff around. I saw that A&Y has some stuff in the background when he was doing his podcast along with Keyframe and their guest Thespio and Midnight Sonata. So so obviously, I'm sure he's going to keep that stuff up. So again, I'm like any other fans out there, I'm not going to really do anything with my collection as far as right now goes. I'm just going to leave it as is, because you know what? The show might be over, but someone new to the franchise might be just catching up by binge watching episodes on Netflix, binge watching them on demand through Xfinity or whatever the cable system is, and then getting up to the finale. So again, I'm not really going to do anything with my collection just yet. In fact, I'm just going to leave it as it is. So there you go. My honest thoughts on those that still feel that it's weird for grown adults, grown men, women, to enjoy My Little Pony Friendship is Magic even after it's over. My initial thoughts are, obviously they, because let's be honest, no fandom out there, past or present or future is perfect. They're always going to have reputations, or will have reputations. Not every community out there, fan-based community, is going to be appreciated. I mean, one big example is what's known as the furry community. And in case you want a good example, a couple years ago, a group of people set off some kind of gas or something in a hotel where a convention was being held, and all the people that were attending that convention, cosplaying as the furry OCs or as established characters that have become iconic in the furry community and all that, they had to evacuate. And all because of the fact that these people that did it, from what I understand, disdained the furry community. They don't like people that are fans of furries, or that support that community, or that franchise, or that medium. And the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic fan base is no different. And it's not just because of the fact that, like I said, grown men and grown women adults, if you will, love the show. They appreciate the show. They understand some of the morals and stuff better than the attended young original audience of young boys and girls. It's not just that, but basically a lot of people want to use the show and use the adult fan base of the show as an excuse for things like pedophilia, and things like that, which could be farther from the truth. I mean, yes, there have been some examples of people associated with the fandom, associated with the community, that have been caught red-handed doing stuff like that, and that's nothing to be proud of, because that's something that really puts a dark mark. It really puts a dark mark on the franchise, on the fan base, on the community itself, because that's not what a fan base is about. That's not what a community is about. A fan base and a community getting together at conventions and stuff like that is to celebrate. Is to celebrate the love for the franchise, for the characters associated with that franchise, to honor those that behind the scenes help bring these characters, bring the stories that they're associated with to life. And that's the main thing a lot of people should be focusing on, more than just the negative stuff. But here's the thing: in the media today, we live in a world where most of the news outlets out there, from Fox, CBS, NBC, CNN, ABC, they'll come out and they'll focus more on the negative than the positive, and that's a damn true fact. So, to me, when I hear about people outside of the fan base, outside of the community, not understanding why adult fans like My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic and its characters and its stories, and feel that it's wrong because it could lead to this or it's associated with this, they're looking at the negatives and not the positives. And some people might find it weird, like, and even if it's not that, what I'm trying to say, even if it's not that negative aspect of the fan base that they focus on, it's sometimes to them it just feels a little awkward and weird knowing that someone maybe within their family or within their inner circle of friends is a fan of a show originally meant for little girls and little boys. So it might feel awkward. Like they'll come out and respect the fact that you're a fan. They'll come out and respect the fact that you love the show and you want to support it, and that's fine. But to them, they might still find it a bit awkward. I should know from experience, because when I came out last year on Facebook and on YouTube and admitted that I'm a Brony, I'm a Brony, I'm part of the Brony Pegasister community, the fan base of My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, my family may have teased me about it, but my family may have teased me about it, but the fact is, when they tease, sometimes it's out of a loving way, and sometimes basically what I'm saying is, when they do tease me about it, sometimes it's out of a loving way, and sometimes it's in a way that's loving, but they just don't get it. They just don't understand, because they're raised because when me and my sisters were raised, like I said earlier, at the beginning, we were raised in a generation where boys have to like boy stuff, girls have to like girl stuff. And there's that mentality still somewhat exists today in all kinds of families and friends and friendships and all that, to where friends and family can respect and appreciate that you want to support a show, you love the show, you want to watch the show, you're a fan of the show, but to them, even though they respect and appreciate that, they just don't get it. And they sometimes, show that they still don't get it by doing a little bit of a loving tease, or doing a bit of a loving tease, or doing a bit of a tease that's loving, but also sends a message of, I don't get this, I don't understand. So honestly, when it comes to, people outside the community that people that still don't understand, why adult fans like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. When it comes to them, hey, they have their opinions. They want to believe one thing over the other. They want to believe the negative over the positive. Fine, but don't try to bring it. I look at it this way: don't try to bring anybody down because they love something that you might feel is not right. So, my thought is, hey, as long as they don't try to bring people down and everything with negative, trollish comments, then I'm fine with their opinions. But hey, you love what you love, you like what you like, we'll like what we like. So that's how I look at it. Honestly, if I was to give my, if I was to give a list of what I consider to be the top five, two-parters, I'd have to go with. Honestly, I'd have to go with. I think at number 5. Honestly, I think I'd have to go with. I'd have to go with Canterlot Wedding. I have to go with that. And I know. And yes, that is I think the season 2 finale. And I know some people might hold that in high praise, but and it did introduce us to Chrysalis in the Changelings, but as well as it introduced us to Cadence and I think Shining Armor, unless we saw him before. But I have to go with that because it might be a good love story and all that. But to me, it's like, what was the point besides Chrysalis just wanting to suck the life out of everyone in Canterlot in Canterlot? I mean, what was she planning to accomplish? Where was she going to go from there? I mean, did she honestly believe that if she took over Canterlot that it was going to be easy? I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't. But I have to say that, despite having some good moments like, Cadence and Shining Armor using the spell to defeat Chrysalis, which is basically like a spell that turns them into I don't know what it is, heart-shaped creature or something like that. Besides that, and Love Is in Bloom as being the song, I have to say that I have to say that it's not probably one of the better ones, but maybe I have to just rewatch it again or watch it for the first time. Period. Because, like I said, I'm one of the late bloomers. So, but yeah, from what I understand, not a lot of people have talked about Canterlot Wedding in high praise. If I was to choose one to go above that, though, I have to go. Honestly, I have to go with Crystal. I have to go with the Crystalline. I have to go with the Crystalline. The debut of Flurry Heart. Yes, it was the debut of Flurry Heart. It was the moment that really got some under people's skins, because it's like, okay, Hasbro. Okay, DHX. Okay, creative staff. How do you explain this? And, despite having some decent moments in there and, being one of the first good moments for Starlight, really focusing on her at times as part of one of the subplots. The Crystalline is, I will say, a slightly better than how do I put it? It's slightly better than the Crystal Empire. That I'm gonna say that. I mean, yes, it had its highlights, had its moments in there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the fact that when Flurry Heart is, her powers are just developing. The fact that when she does her big first Hachu, it just blows a hole right through the roof, and everybody has to stand. All the ponies have to just stand by and like, holy crap. So I have to go with the Crystalline at number 4. Number 3. Number 3, I'm gonna have to go with To Wear and Back Again. I'm gonna have to go with that. To Wear and Back Again, to me, and again, I have to rewatch it and watch it. I have to watch and rewatch it a little bit. But To Wear and Back Again, to me, was basically the culmination to Starlight's, well, at least the culmination to the first part, the first chapter of Starlight's redemption story, because she really she basically leads a ragtag team. Basically, everybody looks at it as the pony equivalent of the Suicide Squad, into a rescue mission to save the main 6 or the main 7, to save the princesses from Chrysalis and the Changelings. So to give her that honor, or to give her that moment in the spotlight, I think makes this one of the better ones out there. One of the better 2-part finales. Because it not only, allows Starlight, Trixie, Thorax, and Discord to really shine, if you will. And I think that was about it. I think it was Starlight, Discord, Trixie, and Thorax. I think those were the ones. Allows them to really shine. But the ending, this to me was probably the ending of Chrysalis' story arc as we knew it at the time. Her main story arc. Because just because this was the end of her main story arc didn't mean it was the end of her period. Didn't mean it was the end of her story in the series period, as we would see later on. But to me, this was definitely a game changer, because you knew Thorax being a rebellious changeling, wanting to do good instead of evil, was going to play a key factor, and it did. And it basically inspired the other changelings to be like, you know what, if Thorax could give love instead of taking it in the right, doing it the right way, and it gives him this new form, then so be it. Let's see if it works for us. And it does. So to me, I look at To Wear and Back Again as probably being the 3rd best 2-parter in the series. Now, at number 2, I think it's a tie. I have to go with a tie here at number 2. I have to go with a tie of Shadow Play, and I have to go with, speaking of Starlight, the Cutie Remark. Because let's start with the Cutie Remark. This to me was probably a good finale, and definitely the start to what I considered a good redemption story for Starlight, because her goal, as misunderstanding, as ambitious as it is and overzealous as it is for her, her goal is basically to make sure the Sonic Rainboom doesn't happen, so that no pony gets a cutie mark, and that basically history will be rewritten, and her friend Sunburst won't leave, and she could be with Sunburst along for forever, if you will, forever in time. Yet she doesn't realize the consequences of her actions, of what her actions are going to cause, until Twilight basically shows her the future. I guess convinces her go into the future and see exactly what's going to be. And she shows her what the consequences of her actions will be if she goes down this route. So it's a great story, and I loved the idea that we have all these different alternate timelines that are interpreted by whether or not the rainbow occurs the way it should. You have an alternate timeline where Luna is ruling Equestria and Celestia is now the mare in the moon. You got a storyline where basically Rainbow Dash is lost her wing and is replaced by a metal wing. You got all this kind of stuff. You got in one timeline you got Zecora leading a tribe of ponies, which includes Fluttershy and Pinky, go up against Crystallis and her band of changelings and allies. You have, in one timeline you have Celestia fighting Sombra. It's like you got all these things. You got all these different alternate timelines that are interpreted and shown. That you got, basically what I'm saying is you got all these interpreted alternate timelines that are shown if the rainbow doesn't happen the way it should. So I loved that scenario. I love that scenario, and I love the fact that Twilight is able to get through to Starlight and help her realize, look, things happen, but we can't just screw up time or anything because we don't want something to happen because we're afraid of loss. So I like the fact that she basically is able to convince Starlight, let me help you, let me be the friend you need. So, and to me, began what I consider one of the better redemption stories in the show. Now, the reason I tie up Shadowplay with it at number 2 is the fact that we've been waiting to see Star Swirl for a while. We've been waiting to see the Pillars. We've been waiting to see Star Swirl for a while, as well as it ties in to the episode from earlier that season, the campfire stories, if you will, where they talk about all these legendary pillars. So we finally get these legendary pillars all together. We find out why they existed and all that. So I do love that we get them connect. We do see them finally debut, and it's here when you look at it, and we get expanded on in the following season. It's here where you get the idea. You kind of see and get the idea that basically the whole protecting Equestria deal, being the guardians of Equestria, being the elements, being the host, or being the carriers, the bearers of the elements of harmony, is a generational thing. It's a generational thing that goes from one generation to the other. So in this case, Star Swirl, along with the pillars, Flash Magnus, Rockhoof, Miss Main, Sonambula, Magebrook, I think that's her name. They were one of the first official guardians and protectors of Equestria. That was in their generation, and now Twilight and her friends are the guardians of Equestria currently in their generation. And as we see later on in season 8 and even in season 9, the young 6/student 6 are the guardians of the new generation, of the future generations. So you kind of get that idea that this is a generational thing when it comes to protecting Equestria. And I like that. Yes, Star Swirl, I admit, came off as a bit of a douche at first, but I like the fact that he kind of made up for what he did. He kind of owned up for, admitting, okay, I should have maybe realized what was going on in the first place, because we find out that basically Stygian didn't want to do this. He didn't want to be the host to the Pony of Shadows. I would say that Stygian willingly became the host of body host of the Pony of Shadows. But he only did so because of the misunderstanding. Because what does he say in there? He says he didn't want the artifacts for himself. He didn't want to steal them. He was using them to make copies for himself so he could be in battle with his friends, with those that he considered his friends in the Pillars. And when the Pillars hear this, the reaction was like, oh crap, this was a misunderstanding. He just wanted to help us. So yeah, to me, all that combined and everything, and Starlight, much to someone like Shadowplay's, not Shadowplay, but Thespio, Will's, Del Wilsonator's chagrin, really shined here because she became basically like the voice of reason. So, yeah, have to rank it there. And then at number 1, I know it might be cheating, but dang it all, gotta go with these 3-parters. Have to go with the 3-part finale. What can you say from beginning to end? Magnifique. Yes, it had some problems. Yes, it had issues that some fans may have not been happy with, like Grogar turning out to be Discord the whole time, Twilight and her friends not kind of catching on, like, something's not right here, we need to check it out, and everything. To even the ending with the whole time skip situation or the many moons later deal. Besides those situations and some feeling that a certain moment's going to occur down the line, I don't think nothing's going to really top this. I mean, everybody was always thinking, okay, when people saw Shadowplay, they said, okay, this is better than the movie. And people thought nothing could top the movie, and some people thought that until, still think that until today. And some thought, okay, Shadowplay kind of tops it a little bit, or at least ties up as being a good story. And then some people saw Rainbow Road Trip and thought, it's okay, but whatever. Didn't really put it in that same category, but thought, well, it could add up. It could add up to being good. But still, nobody thought, something like Shadowplay or Rainbow Road Trip could be touched. Heck, some people look at, School Raise as being an episode that was decent. It could be considered a little bit better than Shadowplay and maybe on the same par as the movie, but nobody ever thought the movie could be touched or any episodes that were equivalent to it until we got to this finale. It's like the creators and the writing staff knew that if they were going to go out, if this show was going to end, they needed to go out with a bang. And they did. They went out with a huge positive bang, and basically everything that may have not been answered, the comics coming out like I mentioned, and we might get some answers there, and as Jim Miller puts it, everything else is open to interpretation. So yeah, to me, the 3-episode finale, the ending of the end, part 1 and 2, and Last Problem, I think are definitely the very best, the number 1, very best 2-part, or if not 3-part finale in the series. So there you go. Those are my top 5 as far as 2-parters, series finale, and premieres are concerned. Honestly, I know how a lot of fans feel about that. A lot of fans don't like the idea that, Twilight at the end of Last Problem, or in Last Problem, has basically achieved the statuesque, Celestia-like model, which is a hybrid of both her model and Celestia's. So, I understand how fans feel about the fact that, wait a minute, she's celestial size or Celestia size now, which and she has the wavy mane and tail, and oh my gosh, that means she's immortal now, and she's gonna outlive her friends, even though we were told by Megan McCarthy and others that's not going to happen. And then we see her friends show up and they've aged, and and everybody's concerns are like, more are doubled. Like, oh my God, they are, she is going to outlive them. They're going to die and everything. And I look at it this way, guys. This is my thought on it, because again, Jim Miller says everything is open to interpretation. Everything is open to interpretation. Sorry about that. I thought my computer just went off there. But everything is open to interpretation. Jim Miller said that. He said that anything now is open to interpretation. And my thought process is this. Megan McCarthy says Twilight will not outlive them. So take that as you will. Some looking at the finale as being the exact opposite of that. Could take it as you will. But I look at it this way. Since it's open to interpretation, I'm going to say that, Twilight being who she is now, being in the position she is now, I'm going to say she has learned that throughout the many moons, as they put it, that have passed, I'm going to say that Twilight has learned a spell or two that she'll be able to utilize down the line. And I could see her casting a spell on her friends down the line that would prevent them from dying. Like, they're getting older, they're getting to the point that, okay, we may pass on, but maybe Twilight's infused them with her. Because I look at it this way. I think Twilight is going to follow the same footsteps. Because if the ending of Last Problem and the ending of the series is anything to interpretate by, Luster Dawn, who is Twilight's top student, and I guess now will be Starlight's top student, she's going to be the next in line. It's pretty much confirmed, even through interpretation, in the ending of the episode, Luster Dawn is going to take over for Twilight. Twilight is taken over for Celestia and Luna. Luster Dawn is pretty much going to take over for Twilight. That's pretty much in the cards. So my thought process is this. Twilight is not going to be ruling Equestria as long as Celestia and Luna did. The way I interpreted it, it could go one or two ways. It's two things are going to happen. Two things should happen. Or two things should happen. One, what I'm trying to say is, the way I interpreted it is two things could happen. One, Twilight could, because like I said, her ruling it for who knows how many moons it's been, could have during that time infused her friends with immortality. In other words, they'll age to a certain point, but remain the same as they always were. And then that's it. Like what we see, like the way we see them, in the finale, in the Last Problem, that's probably as far as they're going to age, because, maybe during her time as ruler, she's learned a spell that infuses immortality to others, or lets her share her immortality with others, and thus she shared it with her friends. So her friends are now immortal, if you will. And that, again, they'll only age to a certain point till maybe they regress a little bit by a few years. And the same could be said for Spike, of course. But yeah, mainly, that's what I think. That's one way of looking at it, that instead of her outliving her friends, like a lot of people fear she's going to, she's basically probably infused them with immortal magic, infused them with a magic that, allows her to share her immortality with them, and it allows her to, how do I put this? It allows them, I should say, to age to a certain point, like what we see in Last Problem, to the fact that when they get to that certain point, they might de-age back a few years. Like they might de-age to being a few years younger, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I don't think Twilight's going to outlive her friends because of that reason. The other reason I don't think she'll outlive her friends is because, just like with Celestia and Luna, she's going to pass on her title as ruler of Equestria, or ruler and co-rulers of Equestria, to Luster Dawn and her friends that she was and her new friends that she was walking off with at the end of the series. So that's how I see it. I see Luster Dawn basically being placed into the same position that Twilight was in, and she being the one that takes over for Twilight. Basically, when Twilight decides to step down as ruler. And when Twilight decides to step down as ruler, I think what's going to happen, because, you know, like I said, during her time as ruler, she's probably learned a few tricks here and there, a few spells here and there. She might have been able to come up with a spell that allows her to kind of not de-age or anything, but basically allows her to go from her celestial-like statuesque figure back to her normal figure. That's basically what I could. That's the other way I see it. And I know you're thinking, well, Brian, you're just coming up with this on the fly, right? Yeah, I'm coming up with it on the fly, but I think honestly, these are probably, in my opinion, two of the best ways to interpret that Twilight, in my opinion, is not going to outlive her friends. One, like I said, she probably learned a few spells here and there during her time as the ruler and co-rulers along with her friend, as ruler of Equestria and co-ruler along with her friends, that she's probably able to learn a spell that allows her to share her immortality with them, so that when they get to a certain age, then that's it. Like I mentioned, we see them as at the end of the series. You know, that's as far as they're going to age, and then maybe over time they might de-age back to being a bit younger by a few years. That's one way to look at it. That's one way to look at the fact that she won't outlive her friends because they'll all be immortal. Or the second option is when Luster Dawn, because like I said, it's pretty much confirmed to interpretation that she's going to be the next in line to be the ruler of Equestria after Twilight, that when Twilight passes her crown down to Luster Dawn, and Luster Dawn and her new friends that she walked off with at the end become ruler and co-rulers of Equestria in place of Twilight and the main seven, then I could see maybe Twilight, you know, casting a spell that allows her to, as soon as she passes the crown to Luster Dawn, it allows Twilight to basically, you know, change back to her normal small pony form, or normal regular Twilight, you know, alicorn form that we're all used to seeing. So that way, you know, now that she's no longer ruler, she can be with her friends and spend more time with them. And maybe if you throw in the immortality she's put upon herself and her friends, maybe the moment she, you know, puts the crown on Luster Dawn, that immortality ends. Who knows? But those are two ways I look at the fact that, honestly, I don't see Twilight outliving her friends whatsoever. That's two ways I interpret it. And maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. Let me know down in the comments. In conclusion, I have to say that, you know, every generation a show comes around that, you know, you want to get hooked, that instantly just hooks you, even though at first you may not think it will. And I've lived for about 40 years, and out of 35 of those years, there's been a lot of shows that have hooked me and have grabbed my attention, have made me a fan. Whether it be Transformers Generation 1, G.I. Joe, He-Man, Silverhawks, Thundercats, whether it's been the Disney afternoon with shows like Rescue Rangers, Gummy Bears, Darkwing Duck, Goof Troop, Gargoyles, Tailspin, Bonkers, Disney's 101 Dalmatians, shows like, even if it was for one season, Wildcats on CBS, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. These are shows that come around once in a lifetime, and people say there will never be another. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. And in this case, when people say there won't be another, they're wrong. Because to me, Friendship is Magic is one of those shows that defied all borders, all barriers that it was not supposed to cross. Originally intended to just be a toy commercial, a 22 to 30. Originally, like I'm trying to say, meant to be a 22 to 30 minute toy commercial that even the creative staff felt wouldn't last but a few seasons. To have the impact that it did because of its characters and stories, I have to say that I don't think there will ever be another show like this. Ever. I don't think there ever will be. I mean, we don't know what Gen 5 is going to bring. We really don't. We do know it's coming. We do know the movie's going to be CG, but we don't know how good the CG is going to be. Hopefully it's good enough, But again, we don't know what it's going to bring. I mean, there are rumors that G5 is going to be for an older audience, and they're going to do more with the series than I think G4 was able to do. But believe me, well, I'll say this: if they can do more with G5 than what G4 did, then I say all power to them. But it's going to take a lot to show that you could do a lot more than what G4 did. But to me, there's just never going to be another. And for someone that thought they would never become part of the fandom, or become part of the fandom, I should say, I have to say in the end, thank you. I have to say thank you. I have to say thank you to the show itself. I have to say thank you to Lauren Faust, to Nicole Dubuque, to Jim Miller, to Megan McCarthy, to Tara Strong, Cassie Westlake, Ashley Ball, Andrea Lindgren, Nicole Oliver, everyone that contributed into that series, voice actresses and actors and creative staff. I have to say thank you, because if it wasn't for you creating this show, creating these characters, people like me would have probably never become fans, even if we became fans later on in the series. So I have to say thank you, because you've made a huge impact. And it's not every day that a show does that to people in the long run. So I say thank you. And you know what? Again, my love for the show and for the fan base, it's not going to end. I'm still going to be part of it, no matter what. There's always going to be theories. There's always going to be reviews. There's going to be a lot to do. There's going to be a lot to keep people occupied up until the next movie. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I thank you all about that. In fact, as you can tell, I've been wearing this as part of this whole retrospect, and that's really all I can say. So thank you, Hasbro, thank you, DHX, thank you all, Spark Animation, and thank you all that helped contribute to the show. There won't be another like it, and if G5 can build off the momentum and the legacy you've left behind, then I don't think the MLP fan base and the Brony community, Brony, Pegasister community is going anywhere fast. And you know what? For those that are sad that BronyCon is gone, don't be surprised that if G5 is able to continue the momentum that G4 Friendship is Magic created, don't be surprised that BronyCon, I should say, is resurrected. Don't be surprised. So, thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. And again, thank you to MLP, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. You've definitely done more than you thought. More than you can believe. Take care, guys. God bless. And thank you all for watching.